All right, welcome to A Call to Action. Thank you to Great Eastern Radio and Brattleboro Community Television for publishing these series of interviews that are meant to inform everybody about what's going on within the minute. Joining me in today's interview, Vermont State Representative from Brattleboro District 1, Emilie Kornheiser. Thank you for jumping on the Zoomcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for putting this all together.
Yeah, well, I know you and I have been crossing paths a lot lately. We've been on just about every single conference call, every video chat, every WebEx that's been out there. And if we could, I'd like to take advantage of you twofold today. One as a youth services employee, and one as, of course, a Vermont State Representative. So let's start with the youth services hat, if we can. Now, are there any immediate needs that youth services has right now that that needs to be addressed that maybe people who are tuning in to watch this can help out with?
Youth services actually is working really hard to coordinate our immediate needs with the immediate needs of other people in the community. And so as the folks that we serve might become more vulnerable in terms of food insecurity or emotional needs, we're really trying to tap into the existing systems that we're helping put up in the town. So might lend some staff to the incredible food shelf delivery system that Groundworks has put together, making sure that the folks we work with, if they need to access warm foods, are connecting with Meals on Wheels, and we're working with staff on that. And then in terms of really the biggest issue for us at Youth Services is right now is that a lot of the folks we work with feel disconnected and socially marginalized in the best of times. And so I'm really proud of the teams that I work with who've been able to transition to some pretty incredible remote social solutions that I think might carry us into the future in a really interesting way. And so I have part of my team are working with youth in groups to have like virtual dance parties, play virtual games, go on group walks separately on their phones with each person walking in a very different place, but connected and talking about what they see on the phone. And so that's how we've been transitioning. The folks in our shelters, we're following really specific protocols from the Office of Economic Opportunity and making sure that they are safe and healthy. And for now, that's true. And coordinating with a larger homeless response team that you and I have been crossing paths on.
Yeah. So yeah, there's been a lot of information going around. Are there need for funds? Do you have state funds? Are there ways for folks to donate? Should they be so inclined?
Oh, what a great question. Yes, we have some state funds. We are still trying to figure our way through what billing looks like when we're working remotely with people. There's some Medicaid exceptions. There's some places there aren't Medicaid exceptions. And as we transition, we're finding new costs and then some new places that we can't find reimbursement. So yes, if folks want to go to Youth Services and inc.org and donate, that would be great. And if folks want to volunteer, I really encourage people. We always need ongoing volunteers at Youth Services, but we're not able to onboard people right now for sort of larger volunteer efforts. And so if people are involved in the work we do, whether that's mentoring someone remotely, which there are a lot of opportunities for, or some kind of the food responses we might need, folks can go to the mutual aid web link that Jen Jacobs and her team have put together. And then that will get fed back to us. So if folks want to volunteer in any capacity, know that that's the best option for it.
All right, very good. Again, so that web address is youthservicesinc.org.
Indeed, yes.
Okay. All right. Now,
and if people
go ahead.
Donate their time, again, it's that mutual aid web link that's been floating around. It's a Google form.
Okay. And now, as far as state-driven initiatives, what are the things that folks in Brattleboro and Vermont, what can they expect in the coming days?
So there's two pieces of the emergency COVID packages that we've put together. And I'm sorry, I'm going to look away from the screen a little bit to make sure I'm not missing anything in my notes.
No, very good.
But the two pieces of that are sort of emergency healthcare relief measures, and then emergency economic relief measures. And so I'll start with the healthcare, knowing that I actually know a little bit less about that because that's not my committee's jurisdiction. The healthcare relief packages are around easing some licensing requirements so that both healthcare providers can be flexible with how they use their spaces in order to adapt to isolation needs, and how they use their staff to be nimble across organizations as we might experience more healthcare workers falling sick or needing to stay home with children or vulnerable populations. And so that package really eased both licensing for whole facilities and ease some of the licensing for individuals so that we can get more healthcare workers into the workforce and have them working more nimbly. And so that passed the House on Friday. Today is Friday, and so a week ago, that was the last time we convened as a full body. And that package passed the House and has been working its way through the Senate this week as the Senate has been meeting remotely.
Okay.
And then previous to that, a few days before that, we had passed a telemedicine package that had actually been in the works the whole session that was not particularly related to COVID. It was a broader set of reforms, but is incredibly useful in these times as people are working remotely entirely. And so that also moved over to the Senate.
All right. So these are a few of the things that folks can look for in the next couple of days, weeks.
The Senate is working through it. My understanding is that they're going to finish up either today or early next week. And then hopefully we've figured out a way that we can, that the bodies can concur with each other so that the House doesn't necessarily need to vote on everything again. And then it would go to the governor's desk. So sometime in the next week or two. In the meantime, there's been really interesting, for me, an opening of understanding sort of what can happen via rules and what requires legislative action and what the governor can do. And so things around sort of deadlines are set by the legislature, but fines for missing a deadline are set by rules and the administration. And so it might take us a while to move deadlines for, say, a licensing renewal or something like that. But in the meantime, we can eliminate fines for someone missing that deadline or the repercussions for a deadline being missed through rules and consent with the administration. And so that's how we're really balancing the need to act urgently and the slow rolling of a boulder that is the legislative process, and generally for good reason. But we've moved remarkably fast thus far.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would argue that.
Yeah. The second package that I know I'm more familiar with because my committee developed it last week and then voted it out on Friday is sort of the economic relief package, the beginnings of an economic relief package. It's really important that we move fast enough here to meet Vermonters' needs, but not move so fast that we spend state funds when we could have expended federal funds. Because federal funds are much more extensive than state funds, right? I think we're all aware of that one. And so what we did was, first, we really expanded significantly unemployment insurance benefits. So under normal circumstances, someone needs to be laid off through no fault and then be ready to work and be engaged in a job search in order to be eligible for unemployment. In these times, we have extended unemployment benefits to someone who leaves work voluntarily to care for a sick family member, to isolate themselves for health reasons, because they've tested positive, because there's sort of a vector within the business, and so a temporary shutdown is required, because a longer shutdown might be required because of state action, or if business has really just slowed down completely because there are no customers, walking around right now.
Right.
And so unemployment benefits people are eligible for unemployment benefits in all of those categories. And employers now, which is very exciting, also have the right to supplement those unemployment benefits to bring someone back up to their full salary level or their full pay level, so that the cost of someone being out of work can be split between the employer and state government, the unemployment fund. There's also no impact for employers once this bill passes. There'll be no impact to employers for their experience rating. And the experience rating is how much someone's unemployment rate and employer's unemployment rate goes up for each person that they lay off. And this really impacts small businesses particularly. And so their unemployment rating, their experience rating, which is what affects their cost of unemployment insurance, will not change as a result of any COVID actions.
All right.
And so that's a pretty significant part of the package. It's really just sort of creating unemployment insurance already exists and already has a system in Vermont. So using that existing system to expand the social safety net in difficult economic times. Personally, there was a moment last week where I think a lot of people were saying if only we'd been able to pass family medical leave, then we would have that available to us in these difficult times. But in fact, it takes years to stand up that level of administrative, like a new program within state government because of bureaucracy, just because there's a lot of things to figure out. And so using this existing system and expanding it is a much easier and better way to get benefits to people when they need it. Though certainly, if nothing else, this has clearly demonstrated the need to have family medical leave in the future for the next financial or health crisis in our communities.
Well, nothing motivates better than things like these is to bringing a clearer and finer point to a situation or a point you've been trying to make. So, good for you. But here's my question now. So this covers the worker. Are there funds being made available for, say, like that small business owner that will also be impacted? We all know how unemployment insurance works. It often will cover that person's employees, but not the person.
Absolutely. So there are some ways that people organize their corporations that the owner is in fact an employee. And in those cases, of course, those people would be eligible for unemployment benefits. And then for people who are small business owners or small businesses overall, there's a package that's already available from the Small Business Administration, and that people can sort of find their way through that through BDCC, that offers lower interest loans and significant amounts of money for people to weather the storm. It's still a loan, and that's still really hard. So a few other things that people can put into place. One of the pieces of legislation that we started on Friday and is moving through the Senate right now is the Vermont Economic Development Authority is developing a set of loan packages that will be at 0 or 1%, really incredibly low interest to pass on to Vermont businesses that folks might be able to pay just interest for a long period of time. And so that's a really important new step that we're taking to help businesses sustain themselves through this difficult time. I also know that a lot of businesses really in our communities cannot withstand another debt load of any kind. And so there's those options through VITA, and that is sort of moving through the Senate right now. That should help. For small businesses that really can't take on more debt load, there will eventually be grants through the federal government, but I'm concerned they're going to come too late. And so want to sort of notify people about some other pieces that happen through rules change, and that might happen through legislation later on. So one, there's been a total stoppage in any utilities, turning power off or turning phones off or anything like that. That's been done through state order. And so that's there. Also really, really, really encourage people to be in touch with their lending institution. And for me personally, and my own personal financial behavior, generally when I have like a really scary debt situation, I become completely avoidant. And I'm sure, small business owners are more responsible than that. But really encourage people to be in touch with their lending institutions. The Department of Financial Regulation has been really clear with lending institutions that they're asking them to work very closely with folks who are, with folks and their existing debt, whether that is about mortgages, car loans, or small business loans. And that it's in the best interest of the banks in our state to be flexible in that way so as not to crumble the economy further. And so if folks are struggling with those relationships and in getting resolution in those relationships, they can reach out to the Banking Association, the Vermont Banking Association. They can reach out to the Department of Financial Regulation, or if that feels like too big a step and uncomfortable, they're welcome to reach out to me and I'll help them through that process of filing a complaint. But really, there's been a lot of requests and pressure to ask banking and financial institutions to be flexible in these times.
All right. No, I think that's good. Always being honest and forthright in these situations. I think everybody will understand. Now, with this in mind, and with this is a good place to leap off, because I think one thing that we all have to be is a little more patient. And we all know nobody pandemics well, because we're all just trying to figure this out. So as we begin to figure things out, and the systems that are put in place today will often be uprooted and rebuilt again tomorrow. Are you finding that on a state level that you're having to do that on a much bigger body? I mean, I know that we have to do it locally, but on a state level, do you find that that is much the same? What the information you go with on Thursday changes tenfold on Friday and needs to be rethought?
I've seen in all of these spaces, whether it is our local mutual aid or the local sort of emergency action groups that you and I have been participating in, and with our legislative council and folks in state government, that there are people in the room always who seem to know what the next step might look like and are planning for that, even if not everyone in the room is on that page. And so that's been very reassuring to me. Some of this is people having learned lessons from Irene, which in some ways puts Vermont in good stead for understanding what a crisis looks like and how we behave in a crisis. I think in Windham County, the Vermont Yankee and having all of those emergency management plans and practices are really helping this situation. And so, yes, things are rapidly evolving, but what I see is people being fairly patient with each other as new information comes out, and I'm seeing all of us being a little more careful as legislators about when we should breathe and pause and push it, and then when we should actually be pushing information out. The path that the legislation has taken and what the federal delegation has done has followed the trajectory that was really laid out last week, and I haven't seen any changes on that. There's not, we're sort of aware what a financial crisis looks like, whether it's a financial crisis for health reasons or a financial crisis for flood reasons or because of a sort of global, housing crisis or whatever it is. And so the fear and the panic and the isolation, that's really real. And I'm feeling that too. And I'm feeling that on behalf of, all the people I represent and, all the people all over the world. And if I sit in it too deeply in the middle of the day, then I won't be able to keep on doing my work.
Right.
But I think many of us are sort of, a week into this, starting to find our way to taking the breaths and working through it, and figuring our way through like finding both the beauty and the incredible people I just feel really heartened by how much everyone seems to have like stepped up on this.
Well, I think that if we keep that level of patience out that you just expressed, and be smart and do the things that the experts are saying, and weed out what's real and what's opinion, even though opinion is more fun to banter about, it's important now that we get more fact-based than ever before. Social distancing and things like that. This is real. This is where we are. I have often been saying through this whole thing that we will get through it the other side. We will weather the storm. We may need a new roof when we're done, but we'll figure it out. And so with that, I think that the work that you guys have been doing up in Montpelier and getting done and pushing through is hopeful for Vermonters and for folks. And I know that our neighboring state, New Hampshire, has a lot of those initiatives in place as well and are working actively to push those things through. I guess lastly, is there anything that we may have left out? And I know that's a 10-pound question in a 5-pound sack. So, but if there's something you feel that we've missed, please let us know.
Yeah, I want to be clear about sort of your previous question. there's a lot of misinformation floating around and a lot of people who are scared. And so really encourage people to go to reliable sources. I'm posting very, very regularly up-to-date information and happy to talk anyone through how to access those resources. But it's not helpful to anyone for me to sort of be trolling through Facebook trying to find misinformation and correct it. Right. And so having people turn to sort of reliable sources and then ask for help from those reliable sources is the best way for us all to get our needs met. And I, again, will say how heartened I am that there's a lot of places where this pandemic has really widened the cracks in our social safety net. But what I've seen is that over the past week, we have come together to sort of close those gaps back up or put something in to hold people through them. And so for any need that I think someone can express, I think there is a resource in our community to fill it if people know where to go. So really encourage folks to reach out to find out what the right resource is so that if we can't be safe, at least we can feel a little more stable.
Good. Thank you so much for that. That's very important. The information's changing quickly out there, so it's always good to do exactly what you said, Emilie, and just to vet it a little bit, go a little bit deeper before just writing it off as something that's fact. And that's unfortunately the age we live in. I want to thank you for jumping on a call to action today and talking it through. A lot of great information. There's a lot of stuff to process, but very hopeful. So thank you for jumping on the program with us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right. Take care.
You.